Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky. That's a wrap. The Lakers are eliminated in Game 5 by the Wolves, 103-96. They're out in 5. A lot to unpack. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one is always free. It's never going to be behind paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with 35,000 plus very sad people, Andy, because the Lakers, the season is over. It is finally done. A crazy and exciting and transformational season in a lot of ways ends earlier than I think most people expected, certainly including us. 103-96 is the final score in Game 5 at the Crypt. Minnesota left the door wide open for the Lakers to try to force a Game 6. And the Lakers, I mean, they put in effort, at least after the first, 7 or 8 minutes of the game, but the execution was not there. The quality of play was certainly not there. And as a result, the season's over. I want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire Stick TV 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Based on the way the Lakers started this game, down 9 at the end of the first quarter, Luka Doncic clearly hobbled by a back injury going into the half.
Honestly, he played better with the back injury than he did in the first half.
He did. I don't know if he was fully, feeling something that was then made worse but whatever. He had 13 points in the third quarter. It was his best quarter by far. But you look around it, like there was so much that seemed to be going wrong for the Lakers. And yet, had they been able to score some points in the fourth quarter, there would be a Game 6. But it kind of feels appropriate, Andy, the Lakers score 16 points in the fourth and are going home because the fourth quarter was what cost them throughout the series.
Fourth quarter cost them throughout the series, but this almost feels like they went full circle back to Game 1, because Game 1, which we talked about for Wednesday's show, the Lakers were all talking about during Tuesday's practice, treating this Game 5 like a Game 7. And that I said, I wish they had treated Game 1 like Game 7. Game 1, they came out super flat for most of the game and like a jarring lack of urgency and intensity and physicality. They came out in the first half of this game like, to paraphrase a bit of what Ferris Bueller said about Cameron, if you put a diamond or you put a lump of coal in his hind parts, you'd have a diamond. They were just incredibly tight in the first half of this game. They looked highly self-aware of, oh my God, we need to win this game. And because of that heightened self-awareness, it did not seem to lead to a lack of focus and intensity, but just fear is too strong because
they were I think tight is the right word. It was in a lot of ways the mirror opposite. Yeah, it was the mirror opposite of Game 1, like a horseshoe. It leads to the same place.
Exactly. It is a full circle journey backwards to Game 1. I thought, other than Rui Hachimura, who was arguably the best Laker from start to finish in this game, and Jared Vanderbilt, I don't think anybody on the Lakers in the first half looked particularly ready or dialed.
Vanderbilt's best minutes of the series, I thought, were in the first half of this game.
Yeah, if nothing else, my persistent bitching throughout this series that JJ should play Vando more, he did, and Vando actually at least didn't make me look like a fool in the process. But
no, he played better. He also played better and was more effective than he had. But
Those two, though, and this really mattered. Those two, Rui and Vando, I thought were the only guys in the first half who really looked ready to play. And truth be told, as bad as the Lakers were, they finished down 10 in the first half. It could have been way worse.
Oh, yeah.
Because Minnesota missed a ton of shots, including second chance, third chance. They even had a fourth chance opportunity in the first quarter that they did not convert. They missed 43s as a team. I don't know how many in the first half, but certainly many. Anthony Edwards played bad throughout the course of this game. Julius Randle, who was very good for the game, but got into foul trouble in the first half. Jaden McDaniels got into foul trouble in the first half. The Lakers did not capitalize on their absences one iota.
It was, it's interesting you mentioned like Vanderbilt. I think part of the reason, Rui was playing kind of, for lack of a better term, free. He didn't feel tight. And I think the reason that Vando played so much more effectively in this game compared to the others, especially relative to his teammates, was he was the other guy. Like during the season, Vanderbilt is effective in part because he's playing in a gear that's higher than a lot of like everybody else on the floor because it's the regular season. Part of what makes him less effective in the postseason is everybody is now playing at Vanderbilt speed. Well, in Game 5 on Wednesday night, Vanderbilt was again playing at that pace that was so much faster and higher and freer than the Lakers play, and that was what I expected the whole team to look like in this game. Was to come out and move and cut him. And instead they were just unsure. And, I know what I think JJ Redick meant with, talking about being on edge, but it was like the wrong kind of on edge. As it turned out, when they got on the floor, they looked on edge tight rather than on edge focused. It just look, Minnesota was clearly the better team in this series. The
absolutely.
matchup was better.
It was interesting.
The execution was better. Everything was better. But like, it just, none of the stuff, and we'll get into it tonight. We'll get into it for Thursday's show. We'll get into it for Friday's show. Like what went wrong in the series and what maybe buttons weren't pushed that could have been. Bottom line, the Minnesota outplayed the Lakers, outcoached them, out everything.
It's interesting. You and I, when we did the preview of the series with Ben Beacon from Locked On Wolves, and by the way, congrats to Ben, congrats to the Locked On Wolves fans, congrats to the Wolves. We both picked Lakers in 6. For that matter, Ben also picked Lakers in 6. But the things that we brought up as potential issues for the Lakers, like if the Wolves were going to win this series, it is quite possible. I'd have to go back and watch the actual show, but everything we brought up ended up happening. The Wolves' ability to get second chance points. They had 20 in this game. Rudy Gobert, who we will get to, and goddamn, does this piss me off to say it. That dude was a freaking monster.
27 points, 24 rebounds, 2 blocks.
Le Dominator, man. Like
12 of 15 from the floor.
He was, but we talked about how Minnesota, they're not necessarily, tonight notwithstanding, an incredible offensive rebounding team, but they're often extremely opportunistic with the ones they get, and that had been a problem over the course of this series. We talked about how Julius Randle would probably be the guy to step up, and if the Lakers were not going to have 3 of the best 4 players in this series, Julius Randle would be the most likely guy to mess up that hierarchy. It turned out to be Julius Randle and maybe others too, but Randle overcame his playoff issues that he had with New York. And side note, you and I both loved Julius when we covered him. So on a, I guess, micro personal note, happy for him. We talked about how the Wolves on paper profiled to be a team that could do a pretty good job defending the Lakers, especially if the Lakers fell into iso ball bull bleep, which they did, obviously too much. Like all of the pitfalls that we predicted, even while predicting Lakers in 6. Pretty much all of them came through.
Right, but the problem, right? But in the reason it was Wolves in 5 as opposed to Lakers in 6, it's like you can say, these things are. The problem was on the Lakers side, all the things that we thought were going to be present for the Lakers, most of them were not, and it was, LeBron. There is a little bit of an asterisk. We'll talk a lot about LeBron going into the, through the rest of, the season, going into the offseason, all these things. I don't think it's fair, given what he had to do defensively, to call him bad. But
he was quiet tonight.
He was quiet. Really what, and that's what I think I want to get into next. It's like, whether you're talking about LeBron, whether you're talking about Austin, who was just flat terrible this whole series, talking about the depth around, the role players. DFS did not have a good series, I don't think. And there are a lot, but like, we learned some stuff about LeBron and what this team would look like and all that kind of stuff that they have to be conscious of for next year. We'll break down some of these things next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Lakers fans might be playing more Xbox starting tomorrow. Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple and all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, you can watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Or, as I like to call them, all the channels that I watch. A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. It's available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen.
So, look, there is going to be plenty of talk about JJ Redick and conversation, and did he screw up the series again? We've covered Game 4 and the choices of the second half ad nauseum. In Game 5, he did change the starting lineup. He pulled Jackson Hayes from it, put DFS in.
Maxi Kleber alert.
Maxi Kleber got the I guess 5 or 6 minutes that Jackson, I guess, would have gotten maybe in this game, went to Maxi Kleber instead.
Boy, he leaped Alex Len in the rotation quickly.
It didn't take long. And we can discuss JJ's performance, but ultimately I did find it interesting. And our friend Crangus McBasketball, Tim_NBA, the Lakers Exceptionalism Pod, who charts games in real time in terms of the structure of the Lakers organized offense versus freelance. His numbers say that the Lakers actually were far more organized in this game than they had been all series. Ran a ton more of structured stuff. And they still scored 96 points and nothing in the fourth quarter. So you look at this, and ultimately we can and should talk about JJ's performance in this series. But ultimately, Austin Reaves was really bad throughout. He said as much after the game, and Game 5 was arguably the worst of it. 12 points on 5 of 14 shooting, 2 of 10 from 3-point range, 2 assists against six turnovers. LeBron, again, it's not that he was necessarily bad, but they needed him to be louder offensively than the 22 points on 9 of 21 shooting. And at the very least, I think what we learned is that LeBron, this is sort of the first time, quote unquote, playoff LeBron, he can't be all of the stuff. Like, you can ask, he really did, I thought, an admirable job defensively in this series, but was just not visible enough, particularly in fourth quarters, for them to be successful. And so the ask is for LeBron going in, and the expectation is all of it. And he couldn't do it. And for whatever reason, couldn't do it. Maybe it's Minnesota. Maybe it was health coming back from the groin. Bottom line, LeBron, too quiet down the stretch of games throughout the series. That's an issue. Luka faded in parts. I'll give him a pass for game 5 because he could barely walk. The Lakers stars, first and foremost, were not good enough in this series. Before you get to coaching, before you get to the supporting cast, before you get to deciding that Jackson Hayes was the, who TNT strangely kept cutting to every time Rudy Gobert did something.
You know who he was?
As if the Lakers had Shaq on the bench and weren't playing him.
You know who he was? He was Nico Harrison in Dallas's play-in game that they lost. Like every time Anthony Davis would grimace or something was going wrong, they would cut to Nico. Jackson Hayes was the Nico of this game.
It's like, guys, like the reason Jackson is on the bench and glued there is because he was terrible in this series. And so why are we cutting to him every time as if they treated him on TV as if he'd been playing 32 minutes a night and suddenly got benched. He had been playing.
Yeah. I mean, 5. We can have a larger conversation about this when we get,
sure.
Tonight's going to be more about the game itself and specifically what happened. I don't disagree that Jackson Hayes had a bad series and that more often than not, he was playing badly. I do think Jackson is potentially representative of JJ pushing the panic button on certain players very quickly, even if Jackson by himself is not the most glaring example of it. I think Jackson is an example that you can look at and say, with JJ in this playoff series, and this is something, if nothing else, I think JJ is going to have to work on. When the trust goes fast, and he hides it like the worst poker player at the table you've ever played against.
I think there's
and
some
taken
truth
their
to
money.
that. I don't think it's an uncommon trait in coaches, but there's definitely some truth to that when you're talking about JJ. But the flip side is, look, Vanderbilt was one of the players that JJ allegedly did not trust in game 4 and came back, played his best minutes of the series in game 5. So, I mean, I think some of this is
right. But there's,
we'll talk a lot about JJ. The point for the Lakers is they lost this series because their stars weren't good enough. Their most prominent,
or certainly not prolific enough at the very least. Like in the case of someone like LeBron, for example, who, like you mentioned, defensively for most of the series, he was very good, but they frankly needed more counting.
They needed more.
And they needed LeBron to be taking over more, truly taking over.
And I think we saw some of the limitations there. I don't think he had a bad series. I think he had a series where we saw some of the limitations in what he's able to do. And again, I don't know. It can be matchups. It can be health. He had a 2-week injury that the second week was into the playoffs. I don't know. And it, to some degree, isn't the point, because you have to start from this point going forward, building around what you saw in this playoff series, and especially AR was wildly deficient. And then when you start getting down the line, Rui Hachimura, putting you over here in this category, you played a pretty good series for the Lakers, I thought, overall. But DFS was not good. And, I think Gabe Vincent they didn't have anything really off the bench to be able to adjust to, I think, certainly not from a scoring standpoint, unless you wanted to try out Connect. But
move Rui to the bench for more balance, something like that,
I guess. But
I'm just throwing out options. I'm not saying JJ should have done it. I'm just saying those are basically
ultimately your 5 best players are going to play the most minutes anyway. Rui's going to play about the same amount whether he comes off the bench or as a starter. So I think you just the top heaviness of the Lakers construction only works when everybody is playing at the level that you need them to. And Luka, he scored a bunch but then he got sick, and that's not totally his fault, but it impacts the series. And, he ran out of gas a little bit in game 4, and he was hurt in game 5. And okay, I'm not saying Luka's trash or the trade was a mistake, but Luka wasn't at where the Lakers needed him to be to win the series. LeBron, we just went through it. Reaves was way below, and that's why they lost. I mean, that's why they lost. And there's a lot of other stuff we can learn. That's why
they needed, again, more from all 3 members of the designated big 3, or broadly speaking, the big 3. That is the
75 points a game was sort of what the benchmark we put on during the season.
And they certainly got damn near none of it from Austin. They got really on a consistent basis about 3/4 in total of what they wanted from LeBron, and I think about 3/4 in total of what they wanted from Luka, and that just was not nearly enough.
No, and I give Luka a lot of credit for playing through what he did, both in game 3, and in game 5. And the assignment that the Lakers were given by JJ, in game 4 to play the entire second half. Those guys, it's not effort. That core group of 5 guys, they left everything on the floor. It's not they were loafing and didn't care, didn't show up. They didn't James Harden
tonight for the first half. They might have cared too much.
Yeah, I know a lot of it's interesting. You just well, after the break though, we can talk about this because most people weren't reacting to how they came out in the first quarter, but I read it the same way you did. So we can talk about that, and we'll talk about maybe how the Lakers begin to look ahead to the offseason next. For the Rudy, for all the and Rudy dominated them, and maybe they could have done stuff differently with it. Minnesota scored 103 points in this game, Andy, and yes, they should have scored.
7 of them were Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, they should have scored more, and the Lakers probably should have lost this game by 25 points. But the point is,
the Wolves were 7 of 47 from behind the arc. It is insane to win a game. To win, first of all, just going 7 of 47 is in and of itself, that is damn near a basketball war crime.
Right.
But to actually,
I mean, you and I shooting might be able to go 7 of 47.
To go 7 of 47 from behind the arc, to have 40 empty possessions on threes alone, and to win the game speaks to the Lakers not coming up in the areas where they needed, most notably in this specific game, preventing second opportunities, third opportunities. Like even the times when Minnesota didn't score, that was all times that the Lakers didn't have the ball trying to make up the possession game. Like just the time that they spent eventually getting a stop, after, really, I'm not exaggerating, close to a minute of possession time for the Wolves. That's a couple possessions right there that the Lakers didn't have for themselves.
Right. And I think, you've got to be able to build a team now going forward where you have the ability to absorb. What if Luka's sick for a game? That you can distribute some of this stuff around. Like they've just got to be able to build something out that's a little bit more conducive to how Luka plays, and all of that. Because again, I am honestly not trying to crush Luka tonight, not being good enough, whatever. The guy could barely move. Like anybody who's ever had a back injury knows how hard it is to do that. And he scored 13 points in the third. He finished with 28, 7 and 8, or 7 and 9, 28, 7 and 9. He only turned the ball over twice. He was trying, he was getting blown
Got
by
the line
early.
15 times.
He was trying, took a lot of abuse in this game. LeBron was doing, there was lack of effort was not the issue here. Lack of want or lack of care was not the issue in this game or this series. The Lakers had holes exposed in what they did. And then, you look at the question of adjustments. I was just going to say, fresh. I think most people read what they were doing at the beginning of the game as them not coming out with intensity. I read it like you. I think they were tight and panicked and whatever. And that belief that we sort of felt from them coming, out of practices earlier this week, clearly didn't translate to the game. I know they were talking on the post-game show, Andy, on Spectrum about, for example, like adjustments, and Lakers needed to make more of them. And I don't disagree because what they were doing didn't really work. I just wonder what they were. Was the adjustment in game 5 to actually play Jackson Hayes 20 minutes because they were getting beat on the boards? I don't think so. A, because Jackson's not a great rebounder, and B, he's been so ineffective in this series. That's why he wasn't playing.
Well, I think with someone like Jackson at this point, it's essentially cost into any of JJ's plans that he's been ineffective, but also he clearly was playing like a guy expecting to get yanked. He, I think, was growing increasingly self-conscious of his ineffectiveness. He was often I know Jackson be foul prone. He'd been better at it this season. Maybe some of his bad fouls this year was trying too hard, whatever. But Jackson, I think, if you were going to try to make Jackson a presence in this series, it needed to come earlier by giving him more leash, not less. And I'm not even saying that JJ necessarily gave him too little, even though I brought up before. I do think Jackson is indicative of JJ giving up on certain guys too easily and making it pretty damn clear how little he thought of them in certain moments. And that is something he needs to do better. I mean, I'm not saying
the problem is, I think in principle, you're right. In the specific, I don't know what to do though, because you're left with
I think he gave up on
the playoffs.
I can tell you what I think he should do. I mean, I can give you an answer.
Okay, go ahead. What should
let guys play more? I think he yanked guys often without it really being deserved. I think there were guys, particularly Vanderbilt, Jordan.
I'm just talking about Hayes. Again, I don't think Jackson. I think Jackson, if anything, people were wondering rightly,
sure,
if he was going to.
Like I said, I'm not talking
too much.
I'm not
kept going back to him.
I'm not specifically and solely talking about Jackson. I think Jackson, though, is a face of a larger problem. If you want to say that he is not the most prominent face of it, fine. But I think it is indicative of how JJ coached in this series in ways that I think hurt the team. I think he often left himself with too few options in terms of the players. And when you leave yourself with too few options, you also start limiting what you can do on the court. You start limiting how fresh these guys actually are, the verve that they can play with, all of that stuff. So again,
I think, and I agree with you, even with my tolerance level for choices in game 4. I'm still,
I mean, like
tonight,
giving Maxi Kleber like a couple minutes down the stretch in crunch time. Maxi Kleber, I believe this is the first time he's worn a Laker uniform since participating like in the team photo and like when Maxi would end up on the Jumbotron doing skits with the other guys or whatever, like in-game entertainment. The idea of playing Maxi Kleber a couple minutes in that moment was freaking insane. I mean, in all honesty, like particularly, I would have kept Vando out there. Vando was playing well. He's actually played with these guys. Like that's just kind of like what I thought about the game 4 decision. That's just kind of galaxy brain.
My thinking was to I'd probably just leave Vanderbilt out there. If you look at the second half minutes, the play where he stepped out of bounds is the one that is going to look bad to everybody. But other than that, if they put him in there to try to, as JJ said after the game, to try to find just a little bit of spot size or whatever. And he earned them 2 extra chances on one possession, earned them two extra plays because he boxed out Gobert to allow an offensive rebound, and then he drew Jaden McDaniels' 6th foul. That was all in one possession. On the next possession on defensively, he did what he was supposed to do and moved Gobert off the boards, and LeBron actually allowed the offensive rebound because he lost track. I think it was Randle lost track of his guy. I'm not, but like my point is, I don't want to say it worked, but it wasn't. Like again, I sort of when you're trying to like you're going to the same stuff isn't working.
I think JJ sometimes
you need to shore up rebounding. You put somebody in there with a little bit of a bigger body.
Here is what
I get it, if nothing else.
Okay, here is what I would say. Maybe this is the best way of putting it. I think a lot during this series, JJ, at least to me, seemed to be spending more time fixing kind of in finger quotes, the things that weren't necessarily working as poorly as the things going more poor that seemingly he wasn't fixing. That's what I would say. Is overall, I thought there were more glaring things out there that required fixing that seemed to be going more unaddressed than some of the micro he was getting involved in.
I think JJ was asked after the game, like, to sort of evaluate his rookie season, and it's a little quick for that. Like, what could you, he's got, and he said, he wasn't specific about it, but I can be better. I absolutely, will be better, and all that kind of stuff.
I imagine you will be. I'm
sure too. Yeah. I'm not like pulling,
giving up on JJ,
no,
but
I'm not saying you are.
I'm answering the questions.
But my point is though, like the Lakers, obviously, I think felt moments in this series where, maybe a rookie coach, first-time coach, guy on a learning curve, like we saw a guy in his first playoff experience. But then I think, the Lakers are going to have this summer to separate that from the questions of the roster and the questions of the performance of their stars, and not get hung up on the margins. And, whether you play Jared Vanderbilt for an extra 2.5 minutes, or Maxi Kleber gets the 4 minutes that Jackson Hayes got, that's kind of a decision on the margins. And this series wasn't lost on the margins in the slightest. This series wasn't close in that way. Minnesota was the superior team in almost every way.
I think they lost both on the big and on the margins. I think
right, but if you're losing on the big, you're losing on the margins. This stuff. If Austin Reaves, maybe he could have been used differently, but play better.
Of course.
Right. So if Reaves is better, if LeBron is more productive, if the roster is constructed, like you go into the series with a playable center, and I think they tried to do that with Williams. And then we'll talk about whether or not they should have just bit the bullet, or what they think they saw, or whatever it is. Mark Williams, by the way, a cheeky post-game tweet, just a smiley face after this one. And I don't blame him. I don't sweat Mark Williams for taking a shot at the team here.
Nope.
But like they entered this series with one playable, in theory, playable big, and that playable big had some question marks.
Sure.
I'm
not trying to say that all of the reason they lost was JJ. There was plenty of subpar performances, plenty of all that. I mean, we got into it, and we're going to get more into it. Just JJ came up, so I was answering the question. I just don't want to. I'm in some ways, and I saw our friend. I forget if it was Daman or Darius who said this after the game. It's like, in some ways, it's better that they lost in 5, because the structural problems and stuff like that are much more obvious and difficult to ignore than if they'd, kind of
pushed it to 7, you can kind of shut your eyes to certain things. But we will start, Andy, breaking down the season that was and what is to come beginning tomorrow, because the season is over. Again, shorter than anybody expected.
Thank you, by the way, to everybody who was with us throughout this entire season, the new viewers and listeners that we gained after the Luka deal, our fellow Slovenians. We appreciate all of you all being here. This has been Brian and I have covered this team for almost 20 years now. This has been one of the most interesting seasons
fascinating
ever covered.
Oh my goodness.
And covering it was made that much more fun because you guys have remained, as always, a really fantastic audience and community. So thank you very much.
And we don't go anywhere. We don't go anywhere in the off season. We, when you get deep into the dog days, we might take a day off here and there, but we're going to be putting out shows, throughout the rest of the NBA season, obviously into the off season with free agency and the draft and all these other things. So stick with us. We will continue to look ahead and all that stuff. Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. Checking us out on YouTube, over 35,000 strong. We'll see everyone tomorrow.